Welcome to Measures of Truth, a His Dark Materials podcast. I'm Caitlin.
I'm Alan.
I'm Francis.
And I'm Anya, and today we're discussing the 7th and 8th episodes of the 3rd season of His Dark Materials, The Clouded Mountain and the Botanic Garden.
Episodes 7 and 8 were both written by Francesca Gardner and directed by Amit Gupta, who we've talked about, previously on the show. Again, Russell Dodgson directed the action sequences, or he's credited as that, and he's the one who did all the special effects work, and so I'm sure he was closely involved in Azrael fighting angels and stuff.
In episode 7, Will and Lyra arrive at the fortress world, and the battle versus Metatron begins. They are briefly reunited with their demons before Will cuts a window into a completely random world, and the demons jump to safety, while Will and Lyra stay behind to do battle stuff.
Mrs. Coulter summons Metatron and enters the Clouded Mountain without the Golden Monkey. Azrael doesn't want to feel left out, so he literally crashes their party. Mrs. Coulter tricks Metatron into thinking she switched sides, while Azrael gets his ass kicked. Back at HQ, the Golden Monkey turns on Azrael's abyss-harnessing god-killing machine, and Coulter and Azrael wrestle Metatron into the abyss and eternal oblivion.
After the battle, Will and Lyra find the Authority trapped in his god cube, and release him into death. Then they go and find their demons.
In episode 8, Will and Lyra are reunited with Mary and get some bad news. Dust is disappearing from the world. That night, Mary tells them the story of how she fell in love. Tempted by Mary's story, Will and Lyra recognize that they are also in love and kiss, stopping the flow of dust and healing the world. The way that you wrote that makes the story sound so terrible.
You wanted it to be short, okay?
Yeah.
Zephania arrives with even worse news. All the windows between worlds must be closed, except the one from the world of the dead. Will and Lyra pledge to always love each other, even though they can't be together, and go their separate ways.
General feelings.
Yeah, it was alright.
It was amazing. I think it was the best. I mean, what a high note to end the series on. I was honestly pretty relieved at how well the CGI in the big battle scene worked, especially with the angels. I wasn't really sure what to expect or how they would do it, but I feel like they nailed it. They also nailed all of the really important emotional moments, including a couple of new ones that weren't in the book. And the demon work was fantastic. Since this is the last episode, I was kind of thinking back on how much time we spent in season 1 kind of complaining about how the demons weren't prominent enough. They didn't really feel like characters, and just how far the show has come in that regard.
I have a bunch of nitpicks, but overall I really loved it. I'm glad we got a good adaptation of one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, this is what I was hoping for, right?
Yeah. That's how I felt. It's the adaptation is incredible just as and that's kind of what I cared about this. I remember, going to the Lord of the Rings movie in the theater and just having scenes of all the characters walking in a big open field was very emotional because that is the feeling of the book. And these two episodes really nailed the feeling of this series to me. And that meant a lot. And for whatever reason, these 2 episodes hurt me way more than the end of this series did. So, like, I guess good job for, like, you, like, really broke my heart.
I was joking when I said that it was all right. It was more than all right. It was good.
I wish everybody could see your, like, gushing notes that you wrote down here.
Classic British understatement right there.
And now you're just like, it was good.
It was acceptable. No, I genuinely really, really enjoyed it. I thought that the ending was particularly well done. Not just the fact that it was the ending of the show, but also the fact that it was the ending of the story. Like, the combination was very, very nice and was very well done. I did also feel like that some of the changes that they made hinted at things from the later books, and I liked that.
Yeah, favorite parts. I could list, like, almost every other thing that happened.
And some of us did.
I was so happy that Red Panda Pan was back, which is such a small thing, but every time Mary spoke, they took something from the book that I thought was kind of awkwardly done and would have been difficult to do on screen, and they made it so perfect. And Simone Kirby was a big part of that. Her acting was fabulous.
Oh, man.
It was really, really, really good.
Great.
I was so impressed.
My favorite line from the books was I'm crying. Okay. The every atom of me and every atom of you, and I just thank you for including that.
We'll find each other. I'll be drifting about until I find you.
And I'll be searching for you. Every moment. Every single moment.
When we don't find each other again, no one will be able to tear us apart. We'll be joined so tightly. Every atom of me and every atom of you. When they use our atoms to make new lives, they'll have to take 2. One for you and one for me. We'll be in the flowers and in the sunbeams. We'll be joined so tight.
The degree to which they crush that scene is like, what the hell, Daphne Keane and Amir Wilson? Like, it's so goddamn impressive, that scene. Oh my God. The way she holds his face and he just has a tear roll down. It's holy shit. It's really good.
Yeah, I mean, everything with Will and Lyra in the whole last half of episode 8. The montage with the 2 of them at the bench is so well done. But then, like, it finishes with just Lyra and Pan alone. Like, all of it.
Also, the fall with Metatron was beautiful. Like,
Yes.
I have some really nitpicky stuff about what they did with Mrs. Coulter and Azrael there at the end, but that last shot of them both charging him and then Stel Maria coming up was wonderful. It was so good.
I was, when Red Panda Pan came back, I was like, did Pan settle as Red Panda Pan? Because, like, I wouldn't have hated it. And then she was like, change into your bird forms. And I was like, oh, okay. They're going to fly away. They're not settled. Makes sense. Right.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick one just like tiny acting moment that really surprised me with how good it was when Gunway picks up Lyra and Will to bring them back to the rebel headquarters, and he's talking about Azrael and says,
all I know is Azrael's proud of you.
No, he isn't.
I personally heard him champion your name in front of hundreds of his own troops.
I don't know why he'd do that.
And then Daphne Keen's face when she just goes, I don't know why he'd do that, is so perfect. I laugh out loud every single time. It's amazing.
Yeah, I didn't find it funny. Like, as someone who has like had my father say to me, "I'm very proud of you," and like had a very like strong emotional reaction of like rejection and like deep desire for that at the same time, I was like, she nailed that on her face. I felt like
In reading my list that I put in, I forgot my actual favorite part that I had written down because I'm stupid. But I did really love the emphasis on stories being important, like that sort of carryover from the Land of the Dead stuff, and how I think they really just did a good job on that. And I think somewhere Alan wrote down that he didn't like the coda on the series, but yeah. I really liked it and how it came up and how it ended with, but that's another story. And I thought that really tied it all together really well.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about it, but that's not exactly what I meant, but yeah.
Okay.
I really liked John McAvoy playing the Metatron version of himself.
James McAvoy?
Wait, what did I say?
John.
Oh.
Old Johnny McAvoy.
James. I wrote James. It says James in the document. You can read it right
it's
there.
It's even capitalized completely.
I don't know why my brain just
Good God.
bleeped out. Okay, yes, James McAvoy.
I hope his stunt double is like named John McAvoy, the stunt
double. John Attaboy.
And I loved that they made Mary gay. Like, I like squealed out loud when the camera panned over to her love interest. It just made me so happy.
You know, honestly, up until that point, I really didn't feel like my life was lacking. And then I met someone. She wasn't like the other academics. She wasn't interested in showing off how much she knew. She was just really easy to talk to. And suddenly I was sharing things I never thought I needed to. And it just opened up this whole world of possibility, of feelings I had never experienced.
Yeah, it broke me that was by far my favourite thing. Just because because of the way it was done, didn't feel forced, it didn't feel token, it felt like a completely reasonable thing, but a change which just took it and kind of put a nod towards, hey, we've thought about this a little bit. Mm-hmm. And like, it doesn't make the story worse, it doesn't make the story better, other than representation. It's just brilliant. And also it changes slightly Mary's storyline in terms of her like why she left the Catholic Church, and I felt that was a nicer way that storyline worked.
Yeah.
Like it felt like a nicer, more interesting and probably more universal and up to date than the previous storyline.
I think it does make the story better because it complicates her character and just like, I don't know, it makes me think about all of her choices a little bit differently. I think, right. Okay, because I made you watch Bros recently, right? And I'm sorry to bring this up, but, you know, the main character in there, he goes on this whole rant about, like, you know, the movie studio wanted him to make a gay rom-com for straight audiences because love is love. And he's like, no, love is not love. Like, our lives are different. Our love is different. Like, even it just affects everything in like subtle ways.
To me, it shaded also perhaps her reasons for becoming a nun in the first place.
Yeah.
Because that is totally different if you feel like there's something wrong with you inside that you need to like work extra hard to atone for. And that could have been an influencing part of her decision.
Or if you feel like you can't live out the mainstream life that you're supposed to.
You have to be cloistered. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It made me, like, even more than I already did, want a Mary Malone story.
100%.
It would, like, after his Dark Materials, Mary Malone in the world, and then we'd get some nice glimpses of Will. But mostly, I want Mary's further story. I think that would be so good.
I don't know if this is weird to say. It also, like, I know that they're, like, Atoll shippers. It shades that friendship, too, that there was, like, I don't know.
Wait, there are Mary Atoll shippers?
Oh, 100%.
Wow.
Like, I don't think there's anything, like, sexual or anything like that, but just that, like, you know, Mary would have this close relationship with the female Mulefa. Just, I don't know, it just feels right.
Okay, I could see it as like a queer platonic thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'm all for them being in love.
Yeah.
I think I completely agree with the caveat that we're looking at a more broad definition than some people would have of love.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I take that as my definition of love anyway. So
I
to
think
me
on
it
this
makes sense.
podcast,
Yeah,
we all do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We've talked enough about these things.
Yes. I also just, that whole scene, the way that they recorded it, like, it was so, we got so little of it, but it felt like a lot, if that makes sense.
I wanted to experience everything the world had to offer. I wanted to experience love.
Did you?
Yeah.
Were you scared?
Oh my God, I was terrified. I was risking everything and I was sure I'd be rejected. But it was worth it. It's rare when it happens. When you feel that way, you have to grab it. It's funny, isn't it? One little moment. All she did was offer me a sweet, and it changed my life forever. For the first time, I was doing something with all of my nature. Not just a part of it.
It's really, really, the pacing of it is so good. The music,
Yeah.
it's
Oh, the
powerful.
fucking music in these two episodes. Like,
God damn it, Lauren
Yeah,
Balfe.
especially
So
the
good.
music
Yeah.
in the fall is so good.
Yeah.
the battle, everything was good. I hope everybody on this show goes on to have, like, the most spectacular careers. Because everything was so good. The guy who plays Gomez, like, he was on screen for 2 minutes, and he was so good.
Yeah.
I was really impressed by it. Like, the tears he gets in his eyes, he's so happy
Yeah.
to see an angel, and it's like, you don't even know what's about to fucking happen. He's, like, played perfectly.
That guy needs to be in everything. Oh my god.
Good.
I want to see Daphne Keane and Amir Wilson in some kind of, like, rom-com.
Where they're happy.
Yeah.
They get to be... Yeah.
And then I can just, like,
Yes.
I think
live in
that's
that
literally
alternate
like
reality.
saying you want some happy Will and Lyra fanfiction.
Yes. Please.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
For a favorite part, I mean, it's so difficult, especially because we're doing 2 episodes.
Yeah.
I really think
God,
that,
yeah.
that kiss through the portal, the last kiss, is like iconic. It's so just well framed and shot, and the special effect of it is so simple and perfect for the story. It's magnificent. And then the closing of the window after the kiss and the way they look at it. Oh, I can't even talk about it because I'll just start crying again.
And how Lyra stepped forward into it, but it
Through
wasn't
the
there.
portal. Oh my god.
And Pan kind of reached out.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
That's the worst. It's just like I want to punch the show in its face, because it's so good. Probably my favorite thing, though, and the thing that like really, really shattered me, and this is so small and simple compared to all these other things that happened is Lyra and Pan making up. When he comes back as the Pine Marten, he's like so tentative, but he's angry, and she is so understanding and caring and apologizes to him.
You left me. I've had to travel so far to find you again.
I'm so sorry. I'm so grateful. I didn't want to. I'm sorry. Please. Please, I'm sorry. I missed you. I love you.
Lyra.
I hoped you'd settle as a Pine Marten. It suits you.
I like it too.
And I feel like it's directly related to that scene with Mrs. Coulter where she apologizes. I think that, you know, she went through this terrible thing with Roger and she made it out the other side. And I think Mrs. Coulter did a lot of things. Mrs. Coulter in the show did a lot of things that she needed to do to survive. And in both of those cases, it really hurt their relationship with their demon. And sometimes you have to apologize to yourself for surviving. And that was like very powerful to me.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes to what I was saying about how the demons really felt like full characters now in a way that they didn't as much in season 1. And that relationship between Lyra and Pan is so good.
Also, Lyra and Pan finally got to hug.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
when she was leaving him, the fact that she didn't touch him, like, I understand the cost, the money, the SFX, the time. It's a thing. But the fact that they can't, because of the SFX, touch as much as they do in the book is upsetting to me. So I was glad they finally did get a big hug.
The other big favourite part for me was the changes that they'd made subtly over the entire show to the Golden Monkey. Because he went from what's meant to be a very scary character and almost silent antagonist to one that had a lot more character and started to become almost understandable. And not just understandable, but like lovable in his own little way. You suddenly saw the love that he had for Miss Coulter, but also the dejection and the pain that she put him through and why she put him through that, which was a very nice sort of reference to the trauma that we do to ourselves. Like, not you can suffer not just by trauma that is from the outside world, but also things that you put onto yourself to hurt yourself. And I felt that was very nicely reflected in the Golden Monkey and in his dynamic with Mrs. Coulter. And then seeing her finally sort of accept that she was actually doing this to beat herself up, and he still forgave her. He was basically like the good cop to her bad cop. It was just, I loved it.
Everything that went kind of unsaid between them while they were standing on the edge, like waiting to go see Metatron before they split up. And then like, the moment where he reaches out to Lyra right as he's starting to dissolve. I think, now I'm going to start crying. That was like the part that got me the most, besides Will and Lyra saying goodbye at the end.
So I think that's one of the more interesting adaptation choices they've made, because in the book, it's almost like the exact opposite. It's the Golden Monkey who's the evil, like, why are we doing this for Lyra character, and it's Mrs. Coulter who is slowly changed.
Yeah, he's the one who's tearing bats up into little bitty pieces for fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's grown up, if that makes sense.
I like it in the show, and I think I mentioned this last week also when they had their really good scene together. I do love this adaptation choice that they've made, but again, I really do love OG Mrs. Coulter.
When she reaches out, like Anya said, that had the look to me of like feelings of like Sistine Chapel.
Ooh, yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Like her hand is the same way that God's hand is, and then it dissolves, and it's like, oh.
Even as someone who doesn't fully agree with this choice that they've made for the monkey and Mrs. Coulter, when they reached out, I was upset that they didn't get to touch, you know? So it was well done.
That's the way to do it, though. Don't leave people happy. Don't do it.
Stab your audience in the heart.
Yeah.
That's what they always say.
Over and over and over again.
Over and over and over again. Speaking of stabbing people in the heart, least favourite parts.
Yep.
Yeah, there's actually things that I don't like Balthamus dying doesn't make any sense.
Oh my god, it was so dumb.
Why is that happening?
Yeah.
Why did he die? Why didn't they just have Gomez shoot him?
Right.
Well, Gomez doesn't
Like-
shoot him in the books.
No, he doesn't die either. So, like...
He does.
No, he does die.
He does die.
Does he? When,
Yeah.
it's
Because
in,
they have
in
like
the
a
struggle.
wrestling match, right? Yeah, and he
Yeah.
like drowns.
He's
or
running
something.
away.
But also you get the feeling that he's just really tired. His
Like he gave
atoms
up.
are like barely holding it together. He doesn't really have any reason to exist now that Baruch is gone.
I don't know. That feels at odds with this other story in the episode of like Will and Lyra don't give up. You must love
Yeah.
again. You must carry on. You're like,
Yeah, no, I didn't like it.
Like
they
what?
should have had Gomez shoot him.
yeah, or something. Yeah,
But I guess they'd already set up that you can only hurt angels in very specific ways. I don't know. They should have done something else. It was dumb.
I was honestly wondering how much Father Gomez even matters. Like, it's funny.
He doesn't fucking matter.
No,
It's so
like
annoying.
in the
Yeah.
book, he's there to be this like threat and to like increase some tension and like a sense of danger over Will and Lyra when they're otherwise just kind of like hanging out and getting mushy together. But with the way that the TV show was structured and paced, I didn't feel like he was necessary for any of that. And honestly, I felt like he served his purpose better when he was doing all that shit at the Magisterium that wasn't even in the book.
Yeah.
I think it is good. I'll defend Father Gomez for a minute. I think in story terms, I think it is good to point out that, like, despite Metatron being defeated and the authority, dissolving from his cube or whatever, the Magisterium still exists as an institution. And the church and all of these other worlds still exist. And all of these people still believe in it. So there is still this thing out there. Like, it's not like society has healed in the way that like the sky heals and stuff, which I kind of don't also like, and all the portals close up and all that stuff. There's still like huge societal problems with the church still being out there, right? And so him being out there and like, this is my duty to murder children, I think is a good reminder that like all's not well in the world, especially if they're going to try and, like we said, go on and make the Book of Dust or something like that. There's still like big, scary forces out there in the world. So I think that's worth having in the story, right?
I think I agree with you, but I think the episode suffered because they didn't really put any emphasis on like the dust was still leaving. Like they've had a small moment with it. It didn't feel like a crisis, and it didn't feel like them getting to that moment was necessary.
And then the other thing that we already mentioned that I didn't like was the coda, and I just didn't like. I kind of never like these things that are in stories where like the last couple minutes are like text cards.
It feels a bit like a documentary in a weird way.
I don't know about that.
That was the vibes that it gave me. Maybe I'm just don't watch enough fantasy, but I was like,
Yeah, I never really like those kind of things. I think that you can hit the right emotional notes in much better ways in film anyway. But I didn't like the whole of like saying in a sentence, and Will grew up to be a successful surgeon, and Lyra went on to go to this college, and we didn't need that. I felt like I just didn't need that. And
okay, I kind of like Will becoming a doctor because of the thread of him being so horrified about killing people and taking lives throughout. So it feels right that he would become a doctor to kind of like compensate for that, or to try and spend the rest of his life saving lives instead of taking them. But I don't know. Doesn't being a surgeon require lots of manual dexterity? I feel like missing fingers would make that harder.
Yeah.
And
sort of known for it, to be honest.
in one of the books, like the special features in, I think, one publication of The Amber Spyglass, Philip Pullman wrote that Will did become a doctor, and because he was so used to the delicacy of the knife.
Oh.
And like putting his mind into the tip of it and using it that way, that made him particularly good at being a doctor.
But then he would never be licensed in England because they're so ableist, and so he's actually just a doctor for the mafia doing underground
I'm hearing
surgeries.
His teleological purpose is to cut things, and so he
Right.
had to
So,
find a way
God.
to do that.
The thing with Will, I think, is that throughout the books, less so in the show, everyone was telling him that his teleological purpose was to be a warrior. And he was like, fuck that. I want to heal people.
I'm not arguing against Will being a doctor. Like, we have this whole montage of him, sitting at the bench and all of that stuff. And then it cuts to them walking around campus. And we could have had show Will a little bit older doing his residency as a doctor in a hospital, like pushing a cart or, whatever. And you get the sense, oh my God, he grew up to be a doctor. You don't need to have, I just don't like text cards that are supposed to sum up. You just lose all the emotionality of it, I feel like. So don't do that.
I get what you're saying, but I disagree. I really liked it. I liked it because it made it so that the last shots were just them on the bench, and then that last shot of just Lyra and Pan on the bench. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have wanted it to go away to something else. I think that would have ruined it. But then also, if they wanted that information out there, because they don't know if they're going to get to make more. They don't know. People who watch the show aren't necessarily going to read the book, so they won't have this. They wouldn't have had this information about them otherwise. Did they necessarily need it? No. I think it would have been just as emotional if they'd left it, but I don't know. I think it was fine.
Yeah, I think once I got over the shock of it and the feeling of being in a nonfiction documentary, it worked for me.
To be clear, lots of movies do that.
I guess I just don't watch those movies.
My least favorite thing was Azrael having this whole weird plan to harness the power of the abyss so that it fires up. What? No.
Yeah.
I did feel like
one.
Azrael was a bit too self-aware. I don't know. I kind of preferred Book Azrael just being fully an asshole to the end.
Oh no, Metatron even calls him on it. Being jealous of Lyra. That was so good.
Yeah. And then I love that he calls him out for being jealous of Lyra, and then he knows exactly how to twist the knife where he says, no one will ever remember you.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Everything leading up to them knocking Metatron off and pulling him down, crap. Almost crap. But the actual bit, so good. And the fact that they did it, and I don't know. I just preferred in the books where it was a plan that they came up with together because they are two smart people.
Oh, I see. I get your point now. Yeah, that Coulter and Azrael came up with it together as opposed to Coulter having a plan and him just kind of stumbling into it at the last minute.
No, because she didn't have a plan at all. She was just like, okay, well, I'll be here.
Well, I think she does. I think she does have a plan because early on, he says, here's the plan, everyone. And Mrs. Coulter is like, okay, if our plan relies on you doing this thing, we're fucked. And so, like, I have to come up with my own plan that's actually going to work.
If I succeed in bringing him to the abyss, will you detonate the device?
Even if you get him to the abyss, you do understand it's not just death down there. It's eternal oblivion. Ask me whatever you wish. We're doomed, aren't we? For all Azrael's planning, we've no idea what we're about to face.
And it's clear she has a plan, because once the white carpet rolls out, she's like looks at the monkey and she's like, go do the plan. So like,
sure, yes, but if that hadn't happened, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. She had to figure out a way to get his attention.
Right?
Yeah.
But like, again, that was just coincidence. In the book, she was like, I'm going to go and talk to him. I'm taking your attention craft. Goodbye. She didn't even say that. She just took it and she went.
Right.
And
no, I agree. The book is better.
I liked that better.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about this a lot in our book episode, but I love that it's the fact that she is an evil ghoul that allows her to trick Metatron.
Yes.
Is incredible. Just like chef's kiss story construction.
But they did it well here also. But for this version of Mrs. Coulter, absolutely,
yeah, absolutely.
And everything worked really well. I just hated that stupid plan. How is he?
Yeah,
doing
it's not good.
That? Where? Like, if they need to sever a demon from a person in order to make that bomb work through presumably similar technology, but this one they're just like, yeah, we're summoning the power of the abyss to shoot up at what how I didn't list it in my favorite parts, but Metatron was fucking amazing.
He's so good.
You wish to serve no one but yourself. You are a cesspit of moral filth. Do not lie to me.
Oh, he was so... I really liked I think they did some very subtle CGI on his face.
Yeah, there's something just
uncanny.
like a little bit unnerving about
Well, all the angels
his
have
face.
like weird eyes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It wasn't just the eyes, though. It was his face proportions, which I don't know if it was lighting, I don't know if it was camera angles, or if it was CGI. It felt CGI-ish. Mm-hmm. It just didn't seem... like, looking at the actor in many other things, he doesn't look uncanny, nearly human in any of those. It was just in these scenes.
Right.
He looks fully human in the other ones.
Right.
Like the casting call, need uncanny, almost human looking.
Looking for someone with a head who's slightly too large.
But yeah, I did think that was really, really well done. Like, it just put you on edge the whole time.
And when he was like talking to the soldiers.
Really good.
Yeah.
So
my
good.
God. It was so creepy and so effective. And in a way, kind of, it is like a reference back to what the Harpies were doing in the world of the dead.
Oh.
I hadn't thought of that, but when you wrote that down, I was like, ooh, that's good.
Justifying my presence on the podcast.
So we're in least favorite part. I didn't mean to derail into something good.
Well, speaking of least favourite part then, so we've already talked about Balthamos, and that didn't quite sit right with me. It didn't feel like Balthamos, but it was fine. It wasn't the worst thing. But I did, and this has been genuinely a worry that I did have, and a worry that was slightly realised, was just that the Mary and the Malefa storyline was always going to be hard. And they did a good job of the bits they showed, but they missed significant chunks. And that sucked. Like, there was never... It didn't feel like the Malefa had a culture.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like... We didn't see any of that. We didn't see any, really, Mary learning their language or Atal learning English. It's instead just sort of skimmed over, and you could take those scenes out, and I don't think it would change that much. And I hate that, because they're some of my favorite bits of the book.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. You could literally have Mary anywhere as long as the kids hook up with her and she tells them this story.
Yes.
And that is like a problem.
I guess one, she needs the seed pod oil.
She really doesn't,
to
though.
see the dust.
Like, that doesn't matter. It tells us the stakes and it shows us the like effect afterwards, but it doesn't change anything in the story. You know what I mean? Like, in the book, all of the Malefa stuff really does change the story and has like a big effect.
How so?
I guess the connection that she makes with the dust itself, and that she starts to, like, we know that Metatron was human and then became an angel. It seems like Mary is starting like to be on that path, according to Zephania at the end of the book, because she's like, you know, you could communicate with each other through imagination. And Lyra's like, oh, you mean like fucking making it up? Yeah, thanks. And and she's like, no, your friend has already started on this path and she could teach you how to do it. And Will's father did it, and blah, 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 blah. And so, like, it really does seem like, even though the portals between worlds are closing, that Mary can, through a different kind of science, open up something completely new and more natural and all of that.
We need
stuff.
a Mary Malone book.
Yeah, that would be great.
Not just that, but or not just everything that you just said that was very good, but also in the book, it is a much bigger problem that dust is leaving, and having Mary be there with the Mulefa and watching, like, when the abyss opens and how faster the dust is going away, and through her conversations with the Mulefa, who are a species who can always see dust, and so they've seen the change over the years and recorded it. That is important, and it makes the scene where Will and Lyra kiss and fall, as it were. It makes that the climax of the story, as opposed to the battle, which I feel like here the battle is very much the climax of the story, and that's also why in the book Gomez mattered, that he was threatening there,
because he could stop the climax. Yeah,
because he could stop that moment from happening, and I think so. They did matter a lot more in the book.
Significantly so.
We have a new part that we added for this week in particular.
Oh yeah,
I don't know who put it in here.
That was me.
Of course it was. I hope you took my fuck you to heart.
I did.
Part where you cried the hardest. I would actually really love to hear from. Yes, I was going to say, please, listeners, let us know when you cried the hardest. Mine was obviously. Pretty much
Sorry, just for context, listeners. For when you were reading these books or watching this series, not in general.
Yes. That's fair. That's a fair point. Pretty much from them saying goodbye to them on the bench in different worlds. I was like crying, but then at the end of the bench, and then you see Lyra alone, and then that stupid card comes up, I violently sobbed. Like snot was coming out of my nose. The least attractive I've ever been, it was terrible.
Yeah, I felt the first time that I watched it, I think I texted you guys. I think I was the first one of us to watch it. And I felt sick at the end of the second episode. Like, my stomach hurt, my face hurt. I felt unwell, and I just had to lay down and try to breathe because I had been crying so hard. It's like someone who's really good at torture. Like, they would perfectly bring you back from crying to hit you in the stomach over again. And it was like, oh my God. Like, even beautiful moments of Mary's demon coming and like landing on her finger and the joy in her face. Because I was already crying, it was like, okay, now I'm crying at this. And like, and then like something sad would happen where they're sitting at the bench and all of that. So it was like, yeah, but I think like I said earlier, Daphne Keane holding, I want to say Willamere. That's totally wrong.
Willamere.
It's some names, I'll give you that.
Lyra.
McAvoy.
Yeah. Lyra holding
John
Will's
McAvoy and
face.
Willamere.
And they're like gazing into each other's eyes, and she's whispering all of the, every atom of me and every atom of you, and they'll have to take two of us. That whole thing is, oh my God. Like, and I think it's a combination of the really good acting there and the really beautiful adaptation of the iconic moment in the book being like done perfectly. For me, is like the two layers of that. I would cry at it even if I hadn't read the book, but because I've read the book and I care about that being done right and it's done perfectly, it's like, woof.
That is one of the things, and I brought this up last week also, like just seeing a good adaptation of so many of my favorite things is making me emotional anyways. So then when the content is emotional, I'm just a fucking wreck.
Yeah, for me it was in episode 7, Lyra and the golden monkey looking at each other and reaching out, and then everything with Lyra and Will at the end. And like, it was... it felt very weird to be watching that, especially because like Francis and I were watching it together the first time. And it was like our last night together, and we were like about 9 hours or something from having to say goodbye. It was like 2 a.m, and yeah, it was just like, it was all very, very emotional.
Part where I cried the hardest was 2 parts, and I didn't physically cry at this, but I did. It hit me the hardest was that Mary not being straight moment and being like, they just didn't need to do that. And I love that they didn't need to do that because they just decided to do it because it was good.
Yeah.
And I just love, like, it was partially a reaction to it. It was partially a reaction because I expected something else and I was interested to see how they did it. And it was just all good all the time. The other one that really got me was that awful whiplash of going from Will and Lyra finally realizing they're in love, and then you have these moments where you're like, they're gonna find out that they need to leave each other, and then just steadfastly, like almost steadfastly refusing to believe it initially, going through the 7 stages of grief, like one scene after another, and it hurt, man. Fucking hurt.
Oh yeah, like I cried the hardest at the ending, which is what the question was. But like, I cried when Azriel and Mrs. Coulter went over. Yeah. I cried at the Golden Monkey. I cried at Mary's story. I was very dehydrated by the end.
Yeah.
Like...
It was awful.
I only brought one drink in with me when I was watching, and that was a mistake.
When I watched it the second time, I thought I was safe, and I was wrong. I was not safe. Like, this should have a warning on the beginning of the first episode.
There was one time years ago in my life where I was in a bookstore with someone, I don't even remember who, but I had like bought my book and was waiting for them. And near the checkout, there was a His Dark Materials like display. So I just picked up the Amber Spyglass and thought, oh, I'll just read my favorite part, which is, the ending, the Every Atom of Me scene. And then by the time I met up with my friend, I was crying in the bookstore. So... like, I'm never safe with this ending. I'm never safe. Right. I don't even have to be reading the book. I just have to be killing time.
It's It's waiting in an airport, and you're just like, oh, now I'm crying.
Yep.
Fuck. You just think of it.
Yep.
I just want to point out that the every atom of me mingling with every atom of you, Pullman is intentionally constructing like a secular afterlife free ending that has meaning.
Right.
Yeah.
And that he was super successful at that, and that's why a lot of people find this book series so threatening.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good question. A complete aside, we can probably save this for the wrap up, but like Will and Lyra, they die. There's no way whoever dies first isn't waiting for the next one, right?
Oh,
like,
in
yeah,
the afterlife?
absolutely.
Right? They're
Yeah.
going to
They're
walk
gonna
through
walk
together.
through the window together, absolutely.
And like the stories that they tell are going to be told to each other and Gracious Wings at the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
time.
And
Right?
then-
Right.
And
Good.
then their other partners,
Will
they're
gets-
going to be like, look, you can just go on without me. I don't actually want to walk through with you. Don't worry about it.
In an echo of the second book, Will walks through the window straight into the road and gets hit by a car.
Damn it.
Goes, "Ah."
The Mulefa world
The
has been
Mulefa world has
industrialized in the
highways now.
intervening like 80 years.
He just gets run down by an errant Mulefa.
Okay, so speaking of secularism, atheism, this book getting banned, can we just talk a little bit about the Authority Cube and that death scene? Because I really liked the adaptive change. I mean, I know it's just like a small visual thing, but in the book, right, it's kind of like a more traditional like litter, like a king or someone in medieval times would be carried around in, or not even medieval, pre-medieval, whatever. I don't know anything about history. The point is, the like sci-fi futuristic cube thing really worked for me visually. I liked that Will had to cut through with a knife.
Yeah, there's like no opening. It's interesting because it's like, it's almost like its own world of the dead, like its own little.
Yeah.
He's like trapped in there.
It reminds me of like a is that the word sepulchre?
Uh-huh.
Ooh, yeah, it almost is like a coffin.
Right.
Whatever you store a relic in.
Reliquary?
Reliquary, that's the one. That's the one. That makes much more sense given the, name. It felt like that, and that was really interesting. And you can definitely, if you're willing to do what we always do and read into it a bit too much, then you can look at it and go, well, they've stopped looking at the Authority as a being and started looking at it as an idea or as a relic.
Mm-hmm.
And then Metatron's taken over the day-to-day. It's like, ooh, I quite like that. I like that he's almost interred rather than being protected by the box.
Do you think it's obvious enough what that is to people who aren't book readers?
No.
No.
God,
Because
no.
that was
I
my
think this is
thought,
bad.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was poorly done. But the thing is, okay, I
but how would
like
you
the
fix
idea
it?
that it was the only thing. Oh, you would just not have it. I like the idea that it's the only thing that survived when
Yes.
Metatron's like the clouded mountain was destroyed. I think that's super interesting. I wish they had talked about the Authority more, other than just Metatron, so that people who hadn't read the books would have any idea.
Yeah,
what
I think
that was.
that's how you fix it. You have to like
Make a distinction.
make a distinction between Metatron and the Authority, and just like mention the Authority more before that happens, so that it's in the reader's mind or the watcher's, viewer's mind as a possibility.
Though on the flip side, I actually kind of enjoy that if you haven't read the books, the audience is in the exact same place that Will and
Oh
Lyra
yeah,
are.
it's just like,
Because they had no idea what the hell was going on. They were just like, oh,
Yeah, and that's
okay.
true in
In
the
a
book. They
cube.
don't know when they do that. They don't know what they've done. We know. It's a very ironic moment.
I wish there had just been a moment where the Authority, the being, looked thankful or relieved. But he just sort of looks scared.
yeah, I agree.
And I think giving him a moment of relief or something like that would have would
it
have
all
been
just
better.
happens so fast. And I think you don't need to add that much more time, just like 4 or 5 more seconds.
You know what? I think if you wanted, I don't disagree with you. I think that's right. And I think if you wanted to keep it in there and you wanted to make this distinction, I think that instead of having Azrael do a Mortal Kombat fight against himself, you could have a moment where he like stumbles on the cube and Metatron is like, you are not worthy to touch the authorities' chamber and blah, blah, blah. And Azrael's like trying to attack it so that the audience like understands what it is. Azrael is obsessed with the authority. And then, he gets beat up and then we understand the context, even though Will and Lyra don't.
Because I feel like Metatron is too in control of the Clouded Mountain. Wouldn't want Azrael to just like stumble upon it, because that kind of takes away from Metatron's power. You imagine like Azrael demanding to see the authority and then Metatron taunting him with it. He's just inside there, but you can't get to him.
Right. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's great. And I think there's also like, I think smart things that are happening there that is like the chamber that Azrael made is a like steampunk version of that chamber. Like dust can't get out of it, and that's why he's kind of trapped in it and can't dissolve. And so like there's cool resonances, and that's like related to the chamber that the demons in the severing machine are in and all of that stuff. So he's kind of like been severed from the universe. So there's cool stuff. It's just not, it's like, it's
we
just
don't
barely
get
there.
It did feel like the authority wasn't enough of a being and enough of a character. And I felt that was a shame. It felt more like a grotesque or just another shade. If you didn't know that was the authority and you didn't know what that was actually referring to, then it just looks like another warped creature from the mind of Metatron. Yeah. It doesn't feel at all linked to anything else at all, which is a real shame.
It does feel like they had a really great idea and then just didn't have the time or money to do it, so they did what they could, which is, it happens.
I imagined the authority like, is it Theoden? Do I mean Theoden? In Lord of the Rings? Where Wormtongue is in his ear and he's this husk of a man, barely able to talk and obviously like way corrupted. That's how I imagined that, but senile and not evil per se was how I imagined the authority. Just like a very sad old man.
Yeah, I like that. When we get to the end, and there's the kiss and everything, and Will breaks the knife at the very end, which I like, and I like the world building around it. I did feel like the Aurora moving across the multiverse and the speed with which the world starts to heal is just a little bit too tidy for me. I did not like that. Although, like, honestly, anything uplifting at that point was welcome because it was like in a lot of pain. But it just, I don't know. I don't feel like that's his Dark Materials to me.
Like it's too simple, too easy in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the thing that makes it not too easy is that they fall in love and then they have to... In the book, it's not necessarily instant, right? It's like the dust will eventually build up again, I guess.
Yeah, there's like a hope, right? But not like it's done.
I see. Okay. So it's not like they've solved the problem. It's that they solved the problem and suddenly it's like the problem never even existed.
Yeah, that is the thing that bothers me. And I like the symbolism and the visual is beautiful of the aurora and everything. And I like all that, but that just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't like a part of this story.
Okay, that makes sense. Although that's not exactly what I thought you were going to say, just based on the limited text in the document. I thought you meant that even just like solving the problem itself was too simple. And I was going to argue that like the fact that Will and Lyra can't be together makes the falling in love and the kiss not feel too tidy or easy.
Oh no, you know what? I think this might be controversial. So it's worth saying here, but I think what they do with the kiss and how it solves the dust problem is better in the show than in the book.
Ooh, okay, tell me more.
There's where they're coming back from the whole thing and Mary is like,
Is that really all it took? Something so small and ordinary.
Love is never small to those that discover it for the first time.
Ooh, yeah. That's actually really deep.
yeah. And she told them before they went in,
In theory, dust is drawn to thought, to creativity, so some great discovery.
and the answer is that moment of like, it is not a small discovery to fall in love for the first time. It's the biggest thing that happens in your young life. And I think that's really beautiful. And it's so much better expressed than I think the book, because in our last episode on the book, we really had a discussion about that. Like Francis said, I think that the Mulefa just didn't love each other enough. Like, what is this? It doesn't make any sense.
And no other human or
like why them?
sapient being ever loved as the way that Will and Lyra did.
But I think this doesn't come down to them being like chosen ones. It's like they're in the right place at the right time. Like the authority has been killed and the rift is happening and the world of the dead is connected to this world, and it's all just like they're just in the right place at the right time, and they affect the flow of the dust in a certain way. And then the angels are able to clean up the messes of the portals afterwards. And so everything gets back on track. And it's not about like you're the chosen ones and all of this stuff.
It's interesting because I was thinking about the comparison between Lyra and Jesus, but like instead of dying, she falls in love, where it's like there's one symbolic person who kind of does it for everybody else.
Yeah.
And it feels like a little uncomfortable playing into religious tropes to dismantle them. Like it undermines itself a little bit. So I kind of like
I think we've talked about that before.
We talked about it in the book episode, but I'm just kind of like underscoring it in a slightly new context.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point. And it's probably not on accident, right? Like,
I don't know. I do feel like the show clarified a lot of things in a way that were a bit confusing to me in the book. Maybe because I'm just stupid or strangely literal or whatever. But
nice.
Yeah, like Mary as the serpent totally makes sense in this episode. The way that she tempts, quote unquote, Lyra and Will, I don't know. It's just more obvious to me. It makes more sense thematically.
I do think they improved on that scene so much. I think just having it be real people and not a book. And how you could see them, like Will and Lyra, looking at each other when the other one wasn't looking. And
it's so good.
The acting in that scene was fucking
When I was
amazing.
reading the book, I think Lyra and Will falling in love just feels more inevitable, and it doesn't feel as clearly linked to Mary telling the story, giving them the emotional permission to open themselves up in that way.
Right. Just to back up a bit to the world is healing, the worlds are healing. My personal dislike of that scene is I just think that the Northern Lights special effect looked bad. Like, I think if they'd almost done it exactly the same, but taken out the Northern Lights, and we just got, like, a montage of seeing past scenes, and how we saw, like, areas where there were windows, and you didn't, like, see the windows closed. They just sort of gave the impression, like, it was almost like you felt that the windows were no longer there. And then that one scene of snow falling on Yorick, I think that would have been better without seeing the Northern Lights throughout the worlds, no matter if they're in the north or not.
Yeah, that's the weird. It's like, what?
Like,
especially given how much we belabored the science of the Northern Lights in our book conversations. I just kept thinking about, like, okay, so radiation and the Earth's protective magnetic core making the thing.
Like, I get that they wanted to have a visual thing connecting it all, but I don't think it worked. It looked weird, and I could not help but think, like, why are there Northern Lights over Chitagatse? Like, that would never happen.
That's not how magnetism works.
Like,
my God,
well, I
guys.
mean,
It's literally dark matter. The whole thing about it is it doesn't interact with things. Okay, it doesn't make the northern lights.
I did really love. I think I like started crying or upped my crying or whatever when we got to see Yorick that one last time. I was really happy with that. And
I believe the correct phrasing from subtitles is "crying intensifies."
Crying intensifies.
Oh yes, crying intensifies. Yeah.
When I was watching the fight with Metatron, it was the first time I challenged just an assumption that had been in my head that whole fight goes on in the abyss, which Lyra and Will climb past on their way out. I don't know why. I assumed, I guess, that they went through the window in the Malefa world, but now I think about it, why the hell would they? Because they couldn't.
Yeah, now that you say this, me too.
And actually, me too. Yeah, I definitely somehow just
So
imagined
weird.
them fighting in the world of the dead with no indication of how they would have gotten there.
Yeah, like isn't Azrael like
Yeah.
sneaking around rocks and stuff and is like and like he jumps out and is like, it's me.
Yep.
Yeah. So like yeah, I definitely thought that was in the
John.
World of the Dead.
It's me, Mario.
Azrael.
Doing? He just jumps on his head. Do 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 do.
So in the book, they are down in like the cliffs of the abyss, like where it opened in like an earthquakey type thing, and then and that's the rocks that Azrael is hiding in. But I also think the books put more emphasis on all of the abyss being connected, because it is the same abyss as the one in the land of the
Yeah.
dead, even if it's a different like
Yeah, but I
cliffs.
imagined them on the cliffs where like all the dead
On the
people
sort
are
of
walking
scree
past.
slope.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Which is just, I don't know why. Because as soon as I thought about it, I was like, wait, they don't say that in the books at all, as far as I remember.
In the book, Mrs. Coulter goes into the Clouded Mountain and brings Metatron to the place where Azrael is waiting to ambush him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's how that works. And then in this, Azrael's like, I am the chosen one, and kamikazes into the Clouded
Yes.
Mountain because he's a drama queen.
Yes, he is.
Honest, I liked the visuals of the fight being in the Clouded Mountain. So I actually really like that change. If they just needed to change one thing for it to be perfect.
What is that?
And to not that weird like that he had a weapon that could utilize the abyss that it comes up like
That
because they
doesn't
were
make
still
sense.
falling
Yeah.
into the abyss.
Yeah.
It's not necessary.
It was good. It was perfect. It was wonderful. I guess they needed a reason for the monkey to stay behind.
Yeah.
The other reason why she has to leave the monkey behind is so the monkey won't betray her to Metatron. Like, she can trick Metatron, but, I mean, there's so much lore in the world about how demons betray your feelings.
Right. So that
So
she's
it's-
not vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair. Then just do that. Then just say, you
Yeah.
stay here.
Yeah.
And she goes. And then the monkey gets to have the moment with Lyra, and I don't have this one thing that I hate.
I think it's yeah, I think it's Serafina who tells her like you've gotten really good at repressing the best part of yourself in the episode before this in the abyss. And maybe it's Zephania who tells her this because she has two conversations, one with Zephania and one with Serafina, where they're both like, get real with yourself because shit's about to happen. And one of them tells her that like this is the best part of yourself and you love Lyra and it's changed you. And I think in a broader sense, like we were complaining about in the first episode and stuff, that Father Gomez like trigs on her lying about Lyra being there and stuff. I think the point of that was to be an arc, right? That she has always been a stone cold liar because she's learned to repress this monkey side of herself, this vulnerable side of herself. And now there's something that she can't repress. Like she talks to Will about the connection between mother and child and how it's unbreakable. And I think it's like what she's doing there, she's talking about like, this is a thing I can't repress. Like I can't control this. It's controlling me. So she can't lie about it. Like it fucks her up. And I think that's what they were trying to show us with that moment with Gomez in the first episode. And so I think that's what I thought when leaving the monkey behind was like, she's learned to like integrate this part of herself. Like she accepted her vulnerable side. She apologized to it. And now she has like a higher level of mastery.
See, that makes me wish that when Gomez had tried to go around her, Ruth Wilson hadn't moved, but the monkey had.
Oh man, that's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, perfect bookends for like episode 1 of season 3. The monkey betrays her, and then final episode, she leaves the monkey behind and she's able to lie to Metatron.
So we're going to actually wrap up our conversation here. We have a lot more to say about the show in general and the ending here of the final season. But it's like 3 days before Christmas and we've got a lot on our plate. So we're going to wrap up here and we're going to be back in the new year with probably an incredibly long wrap-up episode. I already have plans to bring up stuff from season 1, so it's going to be insane.
We're going to be back on our 3-hour bullshit.
It's
100%.
Yeah, hardcore history style. Like, we're going to take you on a fucking journey, son. Yeah.
And we'll also, in that episode, be talking a little bit about our plans for the future. Should we cover the Book of Dust?
I'm going to be a doctor.
Yeah, vote in our Twitter poll. We will abide by the results. If you like our show, please make some time to leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. I'm Anya, and you can follow me on Twitter at StrangelyLiteral.
I'm Caitlin, and you can follow Twitter. Sure, Inferior Caitlin.
Look at we have a different Twitter gag every single time.
Yep. I mean, if that's not the end of 2022 in a nutshell.
I'm Francis, and you can follow me on Twitter at Francis Windrum.
Follow the show on Twitter at MOTPod, and if you need more than whatever the amount of characters Elon Musk allows you to have...
Oh yeah, isn't he upping it to like 4,000 or some bullshit like that?
Or not. Maybe it's 4,000 if you pay the subscription fee. Who knows?
You pay per character.
Send your
us an email
to contact@hollowgroundmedia.com.
So in our wrap-up episode, we're going to revisit what we think each other's demon is and also tell our Harpy stories. So if anybody listening wants to either tell us what you think our demons are or what your demon is, that'd be cool too. Yeah. Or send in some good Harpy stories that you've got.
Ooh, yeah, I like that.
And
I love that.
Our wrap-up episode could be about 5 hours long. We're fine with that.
I will do dramatic readings.
Yes, exactly. Don't send in anything you don't want us to read.
And if you do send us your demon, tell us why. I'm so curious for like the logic people use to assign demons.
Yes, absolutely. And send in your thoughts about the season,
please,
and the adaptation as a whole. And don't forget to stab your audience in the heart over and over and over and over again. Happy New Year, everyone.
So, in episode 7...
That's purple.
Oh, you're right. That is purple. Fuck. I was just like so excited.
See, this is how it begins.
Well, our first outtake.
So, in fuck.
In episode 7...
Septisode. Right. It is like a 7.
No mistakes. Yeah. No mistakes, guys. We promised.
Yeah, no mistakes. You're keeping all this in.
No. It's only bloopers if you take it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, I zoned out there for a second. Did I mention the other part of my favorite part?
I don't think you talked about any of.
Hello.
Hey. I just figured that when I said that somebody should train elephants how to ride around on roller skates, that everybody was like no selling that joke. So
I'm back.
Okay. Yeah, we all got kicked.
That's going to be really funny for whoever's editing this episode, and suddenly we're all talking on top of each other like, hello? Is anybody there?
Oh, mine was mostly silence because mine literally was on a word that Alan was saying, and it just went, and then I was just like, are they going to come back?
Goodbye. Right.
Where
were we? This is no mistakes, guys.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, we got plenty of time.
Great.
Okay, Alan was talking when I left, but I don't remember what was being said.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I was just saying there should be more.
He was just agreeing
level.
with me because I'm amazing.
Yep.
Cool. But did you finish your thought?
I did, but it was a joke, and then nobody was
Nobody
there, so
laughed.
it's like really perfect. I really love it. Because I like literally just said a joke, and then it was like no one laughed, and I was like, great.
Do you want to say it again
No,
so that we
not
have
at
a
all.
good?
Never.
But I mean, for editing purposes.
No, it's perfect.
Okay.
I think that's how it should be. I'm glad I live in the
we
evil empire.
distracted.
It's the best.
I mean, honestly, the Death Star does not seem like the worst place to live. At least it's got like a decent cafe.
Right.
Honestly, being like attached to the Death Star, I think is the best because you get a lot of the pluses and you get a lot of like non-Death Star stuff. And like, I don't really need much to get into the Death Star. You know, they just look at your paper and go like, yeah, whatever.
Man, that would be nice. That
Empire
would be real
adjacent.
useful. Empire adjacent. You're like the cleaners on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Canada.
And they should be careful because it's going to happen.
Me. That's me. Every single fucking time.
I thought you were going to say something like, and they should be shot. And I was like,
No.
Wait a minute, Alan. I don't know why I thought you were going to say that.
Oh, we forgot to do my joke problematic section too.
Well, we can do that now. Did anybody have any problematic?
Yeah, the show's over.
Womp.
Maybe. Hopefully not.
Maybe not. Do we have to come back and delete that and re-upload it if it turns out that they're actually going to do more?
Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
Yeah, we'll put that
It'll
in
we
be-
totally do anything
It'll
like
be
that just
8
for this
months
joke.
before we publish this episode.
No, it won't be months.
Oh, God.
Subscribe to Measures of Truth Red. Yours are the only mails that we will read. Have a good thing. Bye.